Aaron Jones is back in Green Bay, and the counsel of Jordan McNamara needs more information and preaches patience. So here we are. Welcome to the Footballguys Dynasty Show. We are in the middle of NFL free agency. We've already got a couple days worth of data points. I'm your host, Chad Parsons. And here we are. Aaron Jones, one of the big moving pieces, back to Green Bay. No franchise tag, but we have a contract where the details aren't fully out yet. So A.J. Dillon has been one of those big names where a lot of people view him as just another backup running back. He goes all the way to seeing him in the running back 15 to 20 range of some startup drafts, depending on when you were drafting over the last week or two. And now all the way, a lot of people say back to being a ghost, back to being, just another backup running back, maybe in the 30s or 40s and basically banished. And there is quite the two factions going on Dynasty Twitter right now. Jordan, where do you sit? And the fact is, we don't have a lot on the contract yet for Aaron Jones.
Yeah, I think there's still a lot of information left, and that's the big thing. And so much of this is smokescreen. So much of this is you got to remember where the news came from. It came from the agent. And what are you going to read that news as being? Probably the most favorable thing to the agent is typically the way that those things work. Is this good news for A.J. Dillon? No, probably not. No, definitely not. Is there still outs for him? Absolutely. Does this put him in the context of being a really good one injury away guy? Yeah. Is he in there with a whole bunch of other guys we're really interested in? Yeah. And something that you tweeted out today in a response to someone that sent a question to us together was, how do you look at him? And you said he's got league-winning upside still. And that hasn't changed. And, a lot of times the patience play, right? You're just taking that bet. And we took that bet last year with Mike Davis and with Giovanni Bernard and with Wayne Gallman, and in prior years it was Damian Williams, and you just keep going back, and it's just the same bet. You just keep making it. And listen, would it have been really nice if he was a starting running back? Yeah. What's interesting to me, and the thing that always concerns me about Aaron Jones is the running back commitment factor. So if the reported signing bonus is something to the effect of like $13 million. Again, we don't have the full number, but that's what the report is. And when Green Bay, basically their contract playbook is essentially your guarantee is your signing bonus. And if that's true, essentially 2021 is what is guaranteed. And so in the event that Aaron Jones gets hurt, and the event that he performs poorly, that job isn't that secure. So that's just one thing I would note there with his. I think we need more information about it. And even in the event that it's, assume it was fully guaranteed for full 4 years, you still have, I don't think Aaron Jones is going to be a 85% touch kind of guy in the backfield. He hasn't shown to be that in his career. So I think you still have some options there with Dillon. So I think that's really the rundown of it. It's big fantasy news as well, because you have top 25 running backs influenced by this.
Yeah, and one thing I would say is let's rewind. Aaron Jones has not been, he's missed games, all but one season. He's missed multiple games in all but one season of his 4-year career, and not really built like a shift the offense type of guy. He had 20 plus carries in a game exactly once last year. So they mixed in Jamal Williams. We saw, again, for that 1 or 2 game span, we saw A.J. Dillon mixed in that role. So Aaron Jones is really, he's been like a 50 to 60% snap guy largely, for last year. With Jamal Williams is gone, I kind of liken this to look what the Browns have. They have 2 good running backs, and how do they deploy them? You would say in some ways that Kareem Hunt, in some of these games has been optimized. He gets some looks at the goal line when Nick Chubb got them down to the goal line. He also gets some looks in the red zone, more in the passing game. Nick Chubb is the grinder, the guy that, if you're running power and the guy, maybe more likely to get 15 plus carries in a game, it's that guy. I kind of wonder if they have again, even if it's 55, 45, 60, 40, that there's enough meat on the bone. If you say, like, one thing I've been looking at is, again, Aaron Jones, not a prototypical guy. It doesn't mean he hasn't, he's seen 250 plus touches, but never, more than 235 or so carries in a season. So where are the other carries for a team that should have positive game script, can run the ball, and have leads in the second half? And, Aaron Rodgers on the older side, it's not that they have a superstar cast around him in the passing game. Let's see if they improve upon that. But if you just look at A.J. Dillon taking over Jamal Williams' role, there's going to be a lot of games. If it's the Dillon plus Williams box scores from last year, there's going to be plenty of games with 10 plus, 12 plus, 15 plus touches for Dillon if that is the case. Now, obviously, if they sign a notable veteran, then that's going to be telling as well. And the patience factor of this doesn't mean I've actually bought shares of A.J. Dillon since this announcement came in, because now apparently, unless it's factions of followers of the two of us, or certain resources out there, then this is going to be a major influence, where you ended up with a share of A.J. Dillon. You were like, I hit the jackpot, but now he turned into a pumpkin. And I would say this story is far from being written. This is sort of like Alexander Madison, right? With these backup running backs that you think can have a high market share of what's left. If the starter is out, a high market share, that is extremely valuable, because every single game in season, not rooting for injuries, but knowing that it's part of the game and definitely part of the running back position, where there's a more tangible, more than wide receiver, tangible 1-to-1 ratio of the starter goes down. It's not that the team is going to turn to passing it 55 times a game because that starter is out. They're going to have still some semblance of balance offensively, and that's going to go towards somebody. And especially if you have clarity of where the ball will funnel with the remaining running backs, then that is powerful. That is, if you have a lot of shares of A.J. Dillon, and it works if you have shares of Aaron Jones as well, right? Part of you, if you're seeking, inflation of your outcome for your fantasy season, is, man, I hope he's having a good game. I hope he's healthy for next week too, is sort of your thought, right? We always say, like, if a guy's in there in a blowout in the fourth quarter, it's like, you put up 35 points. That's enough. How about you take a breather, lock it in so we're good to go for next week? And then sometimes you get that injury late. It's that same sort of mental process that we go through. But with A.J. Dillon or Alexander Madison or some of these types that we think can change results, if they get 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 8 weeks, there's early season injuries where it could be the rest of the season. So any of these outcomes, so I say the only way you lose with A.J. Dillon is if Aaron Jones is good, doesn't have a lot of fumbles or loses the job, and here's the big one, stays healthy the whole season. So is all that likely? I don't think, especially that last one, I don't think it's super likely. So, and I still think he could be a flex play, or maybe better if this split turns into, well, A.J. Dillon is getting a whole lot of goal line looks, or he's getting 10 to 12 carries every game. That's been a consistent thing, that it almost might be whoever was splitting with Jamal Charles. Like I was thinking, Jamal Charles is the flashy guy, and really my biggest move here was not A.J. Dillon down in my dynasty values. It was Aaron Jones up. Why? Because he's locked in, same team that has fueled him to a couple of mid running back one finishes over the past 2 years. He's locked in there. I think that's the best news of this whole thing. Instead of focusing on the negative of A.J. Dillon stinks and he's not going to ever be productive for us, a waste of a second round pick last year, all of these storylines, I think, again, Aaron Jones moving up in that it's not that he's going to another situation, unknown about how he'll be used. He was retained, even if it's for 1 year, by the team that drafted him, cultivated him, and ultimately wanted him back for a pretty good, as you mentioned, guaranteed and signing bonus.
Yeah. I think that's the savvy play, is that he goes up, and this fits now Dillon, which again, that was kind of the bet we made from the jump, which is, hey, there's outs here that he's a 2021 starter, but even if he's not, he's probably going to factor into being the one injury away guy, and now we have that. So it hasn't been all bad. It hasn't been all bad in terms of outcomes, but it is funny, the reaction. Yeah, I don't know why A.J. Dillon's so hated, which is the interesting part. And I just, you see some of the stuff on Twitter, it's like, wishing
he doesn't catch the ball. He doesn't
No,
catch
it's
the
like, it's
ball.
not even
I
that.
didn't
It's
like him at
people
Boston
wishing
College.
ill on, like wishing ill on him, and it's really grotesque. And that's honestly one of the really like stupid things about social media and this dynasty stuff that we do on social media. Like people say really stupid things, and I don't know. It's just. I guess I got that off my chest.
You feel better?
Yeah, it's just I don't know. I
on the
don't
couch,
wish
on the
ill on
couch is
people.
up
I don't
up
get
next.
it. I don't get it.
It's up next this week if you want to get on the couch.
Yeah,
Or a
seriously.
shameless plug there for Sig Bloom show. But
We definitely
yeah.
need that.
Yeah, we definitely need on the couch. The other one that I thought was pretty interesting is the Patriots going the route of two of the bigger, and maybe two of the biggest tight end sightings, where they also added some wide receivers. I find their use of resources, they had a lot. Wide receiver, interesting choices, I would say. But at tight end, it was Jonnu Smith who got the big deal first, and then same, very similar in terms of the number of, the per year average there for Hunter Henry coming in second. So you had like this 24-hour window where people were super excited that Jonnu Smith has been freed. Then we get Hunter Henry, who comes in and now, I have a pretty firm take on this, but we haven't talked at all, pretty much about free agency and sort of what's the landscape looking like now. One thing I always preach is it's a long process, and in general, probably more neutral or this is not good news takes than overt positive takes. But what do you think about what the Patriots are building on offense or trying to do, at least in the short term, and adding these tight ends?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll say about Jonnu Smith, I never really got the buzz about him. And when you sort of looked at him, it was pretty he hasn't been, like, his career high is like less than 450 yards. I mean, I don't, it's less than 500. I was getting confused if it's 488 or 448, but it's less than 500 yards. And he did have 8 touchdowns last year, which is great, but we know how fluky that stuff can be. So I haven't understood his, and if you're going to be able to get Gerald Everett at like a 75% discount on that top number, I mean, they've been essentially the same player. So I don't know. That one's been quizzical to me. And so, yeah, I think it's interesting. What's that offense look like? It's going to be a couple tight ends with Cam.
I got to guess. We got field stretcher Nelson Aguilar running verts,
Okay.
and then we're going to get 2 tight ends, Cam Newton, hopefully playing a little better. But I'll tell you, I think I've been trying to exit a stage right some of my shares successfully of Damian Harris that, I mean, they might add a running back. Let's not put that past them. But, Cam Newton is still going to be their goal line guy. I think we're going to see a lot of subsets of what we saw last year. Hopefully, Julian Edelman healthy, 2 tight ends that are fully functional. They got no tight end presence last year. They were easily dead last in tight end production. And that was with, have we ever seen a depth chart? The interesting thing for me, they have 4 day 2 tight ends, Jordan, on their roster. 2 of them were drafted last year. Yeah. They're building something. Neither guy, Dalton Keene or Devin Asiasi, did much of anything, and now they just add 2 guys, just splash the pot. And I think with Hunter Henry, this premise, now again, sometimes a blind squirrel can be led right there to a nut, but that Hunter Henry, one of my biggest things about analyzing him through what he's done to date is I question the ceiling. Some people still thought, 2 months ago, and maybe they still think it now, but that look at what he's done so far, and he's going to unlock this, like he's a future top 3 or 4 guy at the position or for a season or 2. And I was like, I just, people say get him freed out of that, a lot of competition for targets there with the Chargers. He's got target competition now at his own depth chart, now with Jonnu Smith. So with Hunter Henry, I'm not feeling the warm roses here. The fact that they actually might have functional or baseline level wide receiver play would be one thing. You got Cam Newton, who I think Baltimore over the last year or 2 has been the only team to throw the ball less, than the Patriots. So just be careful, and with Hunter Henry, I think now at the tight end position, you've got to ask yourself, is there big ceiling here, or is there a big span between what their cost is and what they could produce, or are there probabilities to be a top 10 or 12 guy? And then if there's not, and they cost something, like Jonnu Smith costs something, Hunter Henry costs something, like I think that's the guy that you got to avoid, because, or look to trade, because if you're not chasing the 2, 3, 4 guys at the position, and you can't say in a year or two they're going to approach that or get there or challenge that. What are we doing here? Just function off the waiver wire, right? Look for Dalton Schultz in August or September. Take one bet or two between now and then.
Yeah. I'm with you on all that. Can I ask you a question just about a player you mentioned? So I'm going to steal your bottom line there. Why are people drafting Blake Jarwin over Dalton Schultz? It's one of the most curious things I've seen in Dynasty.
He had a pretty big contract.
Yeah, Dalton Schultz had like an excellent year last year.
He was sort of a baseline guy. He did go to tight end U there at there at Stanford. It's becoming less so tight end U. The reason is, again, he got a pretty big contract last year. I will say, does tight end matter in the Dallas offense that much? I mean, when they're ignored, certainly. But everyone's talking about, Tony Pollard's going to get a bunch of receptions. They got 3 good wide receivers. How many times? And I mean, Jordan's snarky answer is as many as it takes to be quarterback 1 on the year. But how many times will Dak Prescott be throwing? Especially if their defense is even marginally better, right? I mean, they're not going to need to do it quite as much. So there's not much left for tight end either way. I will say maybe it's because Blake Jarwin was on everybody's IR and now they're clearing it off and they're like, well, now I got to keep him. But
he's going well ahead of him in startup drafts. It's just a curious.
I know that's quizzical. The fact that the spread isn't closer, and the fact that if either guy's going anything meaningful at other positions, I mean, just pass on that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
because we're talking about this wide receiver depth chart clearing out like next year, not even this year. So
Right. For sure. So I think the Patriots thing's interesting. I think the Aguilar signing. The Aguilar signing was really interesting because it came ahead of all these other guys. And so it comes ahead of Juju Smith-Schuster, comes ahead of Will Fuller, Kenny Galladay. And you're sort of sitting there, you're like, kind of like squint and turn your eye at it. If it came ahead of Corey Davis as well. And so it was basically the first wide receiver contract. I actually went back and looked at his numbers. He was terrific last year. There was some connection there with the really high efficiency, but there's also some connection between him, between Belichick and Chip Kelly. So that's a sphere they kind of run in a little bit. And Nelson Aguilar was definitely a Chip Kelly guy. So I think that's an interesting connect the dots there for sure. I kind of wonder, where's the fantasy starter, right? So they add a lot of guys, and I think they have some interesting pieces. How many fantasy starters do you see? So
I'll set it at 0.5.
Yeah, right. And that's kind of
set it at 0.5, and I think the odds are going to be pretty split on that.
Yeah. And so that's the interesting thing. I think the Harris debate's pretty interesting. He fell very far in a draft that I'm in right now. And you sort of look around, you're like, all right, how do one of these tight ends get 85 targets? And ultimately, this isn't a Brady-led team. This is a Cam Newton-led team. And if Cam Newton's not going to be better, you can go out and spend $1 billion in free agency, and I'm not sure that it's going to help all that much. I will say with him, I do think there's some potential upside. Specifically, I think there's a chance that him, particularly late in the year last year, with some COVID impact, because he did get COVID. We have seen other guys in other sports have commented on this. AJ Dillon's one of them, actually. Jason Tatum, some other guys around the other sports have said this has been really, really tough to sort of get over. I'm not willing to necessarily rule that out about Cam. The problem is it's not that much different than we've seen of him as a passer before. So if that's kind of what we're going to get, I don't are we going to take the over on that path?
He had the magical touch, the magical super player. Yeah. But basically, outside, he's largely been, at best, an average quarterback. Passer. Yes. We're not talking about running. And the fact that he's eroding as a runner, he had to run a lot, to get to 550, 600 yards last year and 12 touchdowns. That's shades of his rookie year. So it took him that. My joke line when I was watching games last year would be all the time saying, like, basically he has to score 2 rushing touchdowns to have a good game. 1 rushing touchdown means you won't regret starting him. Like you'll just sort of shoulder shrug and say, all right, that's okay. And then if he has 0, it's going to be a train wreck for you. Like you're going to hemorrhage 8 to 10 points on the guy you played probably. So that's the tough part for me, is you're talking about an average at best quarterback at his best. So we don't even know if he's getting back there with his shoulder, his arm. Like you mentioned, I mean, if COVID was a big factor, there was weapons. I mean, obviously he was rubbing sticks together in terms of the weapons as well. But I just don't think that DNA of Cam Newton is like the running back, basically the lead running back, the goal line back, and they're mixing in 2 other guys. And I think what you said, I mean, how many fantasy starters are here? Keep that in perspective. Even if you're low in the, if the baseline's 36, and maybe even a flex at wide receiver, is anyone getting inside that? Let's be realistic. It's a bunch of best ball guys, and I don't even know if any of them get more than 3 or 4 viable games, like, just to be fair. So that's a big point. And I think what you mentioned, I mean, I think a lot of us, I was highlighting, the players on my list, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 at the skill positions, and running back and wide receiver are a lot less dispersed at present as we record this, basically 48 hours into the news coming through. And what's your take on the 3 notable wide receivers, and depending on, if Curtis Samuel's one of them, or, if there's another sparse one, but the point is there's more than 2 still out there that could be viewed as wide receiver 1s for a new team. Some of those landing spots are for overt, number 1 spots are drying up. Do you think they overcooked the market? Like, was Corey Davis smart for signing early? That he locked in about $12 million per year. We'll see if that's probably going to be a 2-year kind of construction, not a 3-year as he signed. But do you think, Galladay and Juju, and maybe to some extent Will Fuller, thought that, hey, I'm getting 5 for 85 with, 38 million guaranteed, and that is just not the market. And who's going to come around and take the best landing spot for maybe that 10, 12, 13, maybe 14, but on a shorter deal? And that might be where they win, is taking the shorter deal, especially someone like Juju, who's younger. Galladay may not have that benefit, that he's a lot older than people think. That, if he takes a 3-year deal, this is it for him. Juju, maybe not so much, because he's historically young. But do you think there's something to that, or that they maybe just overstated or were overconvinced of how robust the market would be because they are the best at the position available?
It's the caution that we were fed early to watch for early in this period was watch for basically the top guys to sign, and then essentially the middle tier guys to
scraps.
be fighting for scraps. It's a waiting game there. That's what you're going to see. Exactly the opposite happened at wide receiver. So I'm still interesting. I think there's shoes to drop. I can't shake, and I just want to preface this with, I want to be wrong on this statement. I can't shake Jordan Matthews as a comp for Juju Smith-Schuster. He's a productive guy. Was Juju Smith-Schuster more productive from an early age in college? Yes, but they had high production profiles, much more productive than physical traits. And then came in early, primarily slot guys that did it more on situation and production stats than they did raw athleticism. We see declining production stats, declining efficiency stats. Is that quarterback? Is that wide receiver? Not sure, but those things all track with Jordan Matthews profile. I wonder how robust that market is going to be for Juju. And if the NFL really sees, hey, this is a glorified slot guy, and we see him as a high-end fantasy asset, the NFL sees it totally different. I can't get that comp out of my mind. Again, I hope I'm wrong on that, and I think that there are legitimate reasons to discount some of the production stuff. Hey, Ben wasn't particularly good, right? But this is kind of 3 years of Juju Smith-Schuster where we've seen declining, some of these declining rate stats and some declining efficiency stats. I wonder what is there. Kenny Galladay is another one that I can see. I was joking. There was a report out of the Patriots, and it was like, hey, they're going to make a move at wide receiver, and someone suggested to me, hey, it's Will Fuller, and I was like, that commercial where the Match.com commercial where 2020 meets Satan. I was like, that's what the match between Cam Newton and Kenny Galladay would be, because Cam Newton can't throw it in a tight coverage, and Kenny Galladay can't separate. So the fact that we haven't seen those two guys, I think is interesting. But yeah, I'm nervous on the Juju thing, because I think the NFL might think differently than we do as dynasty owners.
Yeah, and just looking at my updated sort of landing spot, availability or strength. I mean, you got the Lions, out there that could obviously garner a lot of targets. That's relatively wide open. Some of these others might be more, depending on these spots. I mean, the Giants, I would say that's wide open. They have a lot of ancillary guys, is my personal opinion. Washington,
John Ross.
Yeah, right. Washington could be relatively wide open. I mean, Terry McLaurin might be closer to a number 2 guy than a number 1. Just one man's opinion there. The Colts, Saints, number 2 job. Packers, number 2 job. I actually think the Packers are probably, with their giant committee, they've got Devin Funchess coming back, potentially could provide something. But between Lazard and Valdez-Scantling, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they don't really do much of anything. We've been calling it for 2 or 3 years now. And what do? They go for cheap and they go on their own, and they got Funchess.
Too bad they didn't have 4 for 48 to spend on a wide receiver, because now they're over the cap.
Or a center, or not take their backup quarterback. Dolphins, are another one. So there are still some spots, and I'm sure, a couple of those guys, I probably mentioned the subset that are going to be most interested in them. So if they land there, I think we're a lot of times, we're waxing, we're curling our mustache, about this, and sort of, it's a greater concern than maybe in 48 hours. As we referenced that. And then running back, I think it's going to be even worse than last year in this sense that I think there's going to be a lot of guys hanging out there that can play, that after the NFL draft, then teams are going to say, did we get what we want? Did we find the right value of some mid-round guy that we had our eye on, or the right value here? And there might still be, let's rewind. Devonta Freeman last year, he waited all the way. Who's the other guy, Jordan, that remember it was like August that didn't sign anywhere, and we were like, these are the 2 guys. And Freeman even waited until in season, and they were waiting for the injury, and they eventually get them. But I wouldn't be surprised, if 1 or 2 of these bigger names are just waiting because they want that 1A, and it may be July, it may be August, it may be October, but they'll wait for that, as opposed to going to a loaded depth chart or a depth chart with someone else who's clearly going to be the starter or preferred, and they're pretty much going to need an injury on that one depth chart, to sort of, get a decent contract, get some decent opportunity, and maybe reset, next off season with better opportunity. But I think Leonard Fournette, for example, would be smart. I've heard Seattle or Tampa Bay, that both of those, you would figure he'd be well involved, in that backfield. And Seattle is kind of a sneaky bet right now, in terms of you're kind of betting against the durability that hasn't been there with Rashad Penny, that you could have a run of that backfield, with one of these guys. But there's a lot of potential injury away backups, or better that can play, that we might have to wait a while. And I guess my dynasty takeaway would be, if you have these now, if you're under some roster crunch, FFPC, we have its rosters in a couple weeks. I get that, and it's really shallow. But otherwise, I mean, really keep assessing, you're breaking ties, holding them, especially if you think these running backs can play. I understand if you get to your 306 in your rookie draft, you're like, I want to make the pick, and I got to drop one of these guys. I totally get it. But then you're going to have another couple months probably of data points on which one, you will be shedding, and make the best choice you can. And then you can always reassess and maybe get them back, closer to the season if it warrants. But yeah, I would just say, you're trying to keep them as much as you can. Keep your options open as these depth charts develop over the coming months.
Yeah. I think in terms of dynasty impact, I think that probably Fournette's the biggest shoe to drop, right? Is he the next? Yeah, in terms of league changing outside of the receivers, that's pretty much the story is Fournette, right?
Well, and the other part is, and we haven't mentioned this, is whoever signs now, they got to get through, especially the first maybe 2 or 3 guys of the NFL draft. that they're going to splash something. And right now, I mean, I only got 4 or 5 sort of cream opening. You could easily see, running back 1 availability. Like the lead job is just wide open there for the taking. Otherwise, it's a little more ambiguous. And so just keep that in mind, that it may be a veteran, but it may be a veteran and they splash the pot with a rookie. So just keep that in mind.
All right. Kansas City, one of those teams that needs a running back? Where are we at on that?
Super Bowl MVP Damian Williams is not there. I will say good news for Darrell Williams, but yeah, they're probably going to do something. I got you. Hey, we're team Clyde Edwards-Helaire now that he's
we are.
So come on, don't put the billboard up that doesn't apply here.
Yeah, don't ever call us take locks. We'll be in on the exact opposite side of a bet 1 year later. Don't you worry.
We were all out on Josh Allen until we found out what the price was, and then we were all in, baby. And then Edwards-Helaire, it's like he cost what last offseason? All out, baby. After week 1, all out, and now we're all the way back in, 2 feet in, square dance.
Drafted him in a startup draft this week.
Exactly. Look at that.
Yeah,
you're listening to Chad Parsons, Jordan McNamara, episode 46 of the Football Guys Dynasty Show. I will direct you this week. We've got a March Madness bracket for Football Guys that you can join. So obviously you want to get on that before we hit, I believe Friday would probably be the cutoff. The games are starting Friday, not Thursday this week. But there's an actual post over there at the Football Guys homepage. You can find that on the left sidebar as well. And again, you're going to get a lifetime subscription to Football Guys. So again, that is infinitely valuable. I'll tell you this, Football Guys isn't going anywhere. So you're going to have this for potentially decades. It may motivate you to take better care of yourself. You're like, I got to keep this, I got to keep this Football Guys membership forever.
Like the Bobby Bonilla contract.
Exactly. So enter that Football Guys group. It's got all the instructions there. Even I can figure out how to join. The instructions are so good with screenshots. So again, encourage you to join, get as many people in that March Madness bracket for Football Guys as possible, and make your bets. And a lifetime subscription is on the line. Let's get to a little.
I gotta win that.
Exactly. Take it down. Let's get to a few Dynasty trades to close up. And actually, I think next week we'll again clean up the loose ends. We didn't talk about everything. Some super flex value on the line, with some of these ancillary quarterbacks. We'll get to that next week. So let's do a couple trades here. And then, of course, the quotes from the Shark Pool for the week. I wanted to ask you, there's some strategy points within these trades. So 109 was traded, one quarterback. I have to say that. Jordan will ask questions if I don't. We got 109 for a 22 first and second. What are your thoughts on where the line is and for how much to trade out completely of the first round in advance of the rookie draft?
It's interesting. I do like the shot at the future pick because it is random. And when you sort of take it a look out, you should think about it as like a 105. So that's historically how I would think of that. The question that I would have is, when does this trade ever go away? And this is the problem that I have with doing this. This may ultimately be a good decision. I can't say right now as I sit here.
But is it the best timing decision?
Correct. And you will know that. I suspect, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but I would suspect that if you waited until you're on the clock, that it's not getting worse than that from the Dynasty GM that offered you this, would just be my hunch. And so if they're offering it to you now, that deal probably is not going away. The question is are they going to offer it to somebody else? That might be a different thing. You're going to lose out on that. Generally speaking, I have found, I can typically move back from somewhere in the mid first to the late second and get a future first. So that's something that I think isn't an exceptional deal that I would pounce on. Again, on the clock, is that the right decision? We can sort of talk about that as the class gets closer and we have more idea about pedigree and those sorts of things. Right now, I would be hesitant to do that particular deal.
I'll take a random guess that this is one of those types of GMs that they shop their future first. Like they are trying to get something now, whether it's a player, whether it's a pick, whatever, because they probably, don't have their pick from this year. They sold it last year. So I think what you said, is also something to consider. If this is that GM, then it could be someone that they're going to shop to 108 and 110, or 111. Who knows how low they go to offer something like this, or 112 for their first alone. So who knows? It's a sliding scale. So you may have needed to quote unquote take advantage of this. But I always think about, 109. Is that the first 2 or 3 running backs, 5 or 6 wide receivers in a one quarterback, Kyle Pitts as well. I mean, that's pretty much the zone, and even if you get, Trevor Lawrence not in the top 9 or 10. So, I mean, that's a pretty decent floor of like worst case scenario. And like you said, it's not going down. That's the one thing I would say. Now I wanted to ask you about this because it's a later pick. So what do you think about trading stock again, 302 and 312 for a second next year? So as you go down in the draft, does your take change in terms of your recommendation to move out preemptively and get a higher pick?
I think you have less upside, obviously. I don't know. I like to have pick flexibility right now. And that could be the problem with selling those picks for a future pick is you don't know if someone's going to fall, right? And so this was like the Cole Kmet thing last year where Cole Kmet just kept falling to me in round 3 of rookie drafts. And if I didn't have a pick there, I couldn't. That was absolutely the right play. But if you didn't have a pick there, you can't do it. So I sort of like to have that in my pocket. I think you could probably do that. Deal at another point would be my hunch. Again, I don't think this one goes away either.
Can you get 302 for the second, like on the clock a lot of times early in the round like that? And now you would have had 312.
The other point too. Yeah.
Well, I love what you said, which is if your last pick was 204 and you just cleared out the third round, your next pick is 40 something. Like you said, you really can't. I don't think people understand until it happens to you that, if you're trying to go for 4, 5, 6, 8 picks and you're trying to get there, yet you don't have a pick coming up, what are you trading? A player? A future pick that you shouldn't do? Like, it's hard to get in there and you need someone receptive. Yet if you have 302 and you're trying to get to 210, it's a heck of a lot easier than having no pick in that zone. So
it's like your Alexander Madison. It's like your Alexander Madison story.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
I couch sessions.
I know. I had a 30-minute show where I was just venting about how, and what's funny is the end story was I got him.
Right.
The end story was I actually got him at like 304, but you never can, in your calculus, you never think that that's possible. And I was trying to trade for him for like a day and a half. I lost I lost 2 pounds of body weight through sweat. Didn't sleep that night. I sleep well, and you cost me sleep. But I love me some Alexander Madison. Still do. All right. We've got, this is half PPR, 1 quarterback. George Kittle and a second next year for, wait for it, Allen Robinson, Irv Smith, 108, and a first in 2023. So that's a lot for Kittle.
It is. So Allen Robinson, Irv Smith, a 108 and a future first 2 years from now.
Yeah. Interesting.
Man, that's a lot to get back for Kittle. You know what? It's interesting about this. Like, people love them some Kittle. I think when you look at it on paper, that Darren Waller's got just as good a case to be tight end too. How effective, given some of the wear and tear of Kittle, is he going to be on that 2022 pick or on that 2023 pick? Right. So 2 years out, he banged up a lot. So I think that there's some sneaky upside there.
Well, and also you've got competition for targets, right? I mean, you've got Deebo Samuel still there, but Brandon Ayuk had a really strong rookie season. So if they have actual weapons, or if they upgrade running back, I mean, to pretend like Kittle's going to be the go away wide receiver 1 on that team where he was before, that's one of the biggest points I have. Yeah. And paying for a tight end, it's not 2 PPR.
Right.
Like, and this is Allen Robinson, 2 firsts, and Irv Smith, who has so much buzz right now that you can probably flip him for at least a second.
Yeah.
So you're getting that second you gave back. I don't know. To me, this is a crushing, like, don't even think about it. It's Allen Robinson's side, not particularly close.
Well, and I think it's worth noting that you're high on Robinson via the market too. So like when you stack these assets up against each other, you could sort of look at them and say, well, like, man, there's a huge gap from Kittle to the other player on the other side. But you have Allen Robinson really high. So
Yeah. Does Robinson have similar quality years remaining to George Kittle?
probably, right? Wouldn't you take like if I told you one of them is going to be a fantasy starter for the next 3 years, right? Each of the next 3 years, I think Robinson's probably the better bet.
I also think people overrate. This is one thing that really kind of floored me when I looked into it. Is pedigree matters for even longevity in the NFL. It's an amazingly sticky thing. And so even tight ends, so you're looking at like a day 3 tight end. I mean, they last in the NFL like 60% as long as like a round 1 tight end. Just lasting, just being there, playing games, whether or not you're 1,000-yard guy through the air or not. And so for George Kittle, this whole storyline of like, oh, well, now he's a hit, now he's awesome, and now you should value him like any other tight end of his age that he's going to last for X amount of time. No, draft position still matters. It's amazing. It still matters. And if you don't factor that in, then I think you're losing some margins, some margins on dynasty values in the market. Like what we're saying. I mean, some people have Kittle the go away tight end 1 in dynasty. And I think it's a lot more contested than that. But this trade kind of alludes to the fact that, yeah, this guy thinks he's, this person thinks he's wide receiver, the tight end 1 for, pretty easily by paying that much. I just go about addressing tight end a different way, even if you're loaded. I mean, I get it, but anyway. All right, let's do, how about this? 109 and Kareem Hunt for Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard.
How fast can I get to my computer to say yes?
Pretty fast. The fact that you get Pollard thrown in there, as one of the top backups for upside, I mean, you insulate yourself, so much.
Hey, can we get really geeky sometime in the very near future and do a rundown of all the backup jobs? Because I'm really excited to get back after some running back backup talk. So I think maybe
it's early.
Weeks.
It's early.
We got time. I mean, you got to lay the foundation there for the NFL draft. But
that's true. Can we quiet the sizzle and buzz off Carlos Hyde, since he's horrible and the backup job in Jacksonville is horrible? So
yeah, hey,
that would be a good one.
A connection there with Ohio State, by the way. I think people may be missing that. He did play for Urban Meyer, so and I think those personal things matter too. I don't know if it's a huge. It's not predictive in terms of production, but I do think in terms of trust and all those things, I do think
who you're familiar with exactly. Yeah. And one final one. This is a quickie. Superflex. Kenny Galladay or 201. I don't even know if we've ever talked about Kenny Galladay between us.
That's interesting.
Let me say this. Kenny Galladay, or let's say 201 is like the 4th or something wide receiver that's drafted in round 1. Something like that is probably the BPA there.
I think that's right. Yeah, because you're getting 4 quarterbacks, probably 3 running backs at least, a tight end. So you're sort of in that, maybe quarterback 5. Yeah. Man, it's interesting.
Might be Mac Jones or
whoever.
But you're getting like 6 years younger at wide receiver.
Yeah. I think I'd take the pick side, which seems kind of crazy.
It does seem crazy, doesn't it? But Galladay yet to sign. We don't really have clarity, and I mean I don't know. I'm not in he's like the go away alpha guy. So we'll see if he tilts an offense. But color me.
Well, he does. Skeptical. He can't, because he doesn't separate from people. Like you can't really do that. I will say though that Kenny Galladay is a player that I have that has changed my mind on how I think about dynasty. So I do think that once you hit, you sort of convert into the density. He's the base rate versus density. He's that player that forced me to look at that. What interests me though is like you said. The market right now is just, it's a little quizzical. You get the chance to reset. And plus, if you take that 201, that's liquid, and you might be able to move other pieces around to get, that might not be quarterback 5, that might be the shot to get quarterback 3, or the piece that sort of gets you up a tier,
or wide receiver 2, or running back 2, or whatever your flavor is in the mid first. That if you have 205 and Galladay, you may not be able to get there, but 201 and 205 might get you there.
Right. You could get to, you could package that with 110, and all of a sudden you're up at 105, right? Or whatever. I do think that there's absolutely value in that. And I wonder ultimately what you get a wide receiver changing teams. Those aren't necessarily good things either. And what, if he's going to finish in sort of the wide receiver 18 to 36 range, how much does that
really matter?
Yeah. So that would sort of be my thought there on him.
Especially, if Galladay's like your wide receiver 4 or 5 or something, and he really just doesn't move the needle. This gives you the flexibility to get something you like better, get something that's insulated, and really just take a power pack shot, right? I mean, Galladay's not going up in dynasty value. He's old enough, and he doesn't really have the profile of like, oh yeah, he can move up 2, 3, 4 rounds. Like that's not really in his radius there. All right. Let's get to quotes from the Footballguys Dynasty Forum this week.
Best segment in Dynasty Fantasy Football here. Here we go.
All right. Excited for Nick Chubb greater than Cam Akers. This seems to be contentious in and of itself, but I prefer the guy who has done it for a whole season before and is still pretty young on what we know will continue to be a run-heavy offense.
We've talked about this, and I like Cam Akers. People are anointing him as the second coming, and that is dangerous. And so when you look at the priors on guys like Nick Chubb, they look a lot better than they do on Cam Akers. So that would be, I think that there is some credit to that. And I was going through an old draft that I did just this week. And I was just looking at, doing some work on some, cleaning up some process from years past. There's a lot of 3rd and 4th round Kerryon Johnson shares that kind of strikes similarly close to Cam Akers in a very concerning, small sample size as a rookie, lots of margin for her, hurt very badly when they miss type of things. I think Nick Chubb's really interesting from a physical talent perspective. He is older, they're very different prospects. But if you told me from the rest of his career that Nick Chubb outproduced Cam Akers by a wide margin, that wouldn't surprise me. Yeah, I don't think that's the most likely outcome, but that would not surprise me.
Yeah, Cam Akers is definitely the high variance option, right? Because he still has possibilities to get really high. He already is really high, but he has if he actually does it in September, this thing is like nuclear, right? I mean, if he's actually used in the passing game, they've got Matt Stafford. I mean, the Rams are an offense that potentially we can get excited about again. I mean, it has been a little stretch of time here, right? I mean, all the hand wringing about all the machinations in the backfield. Jared Goff didn't play particularly well, the magic of the scheme and McVay and all this stuff, but they could get back to old school, right? I mean, this coming year. So all that, I'm probably the biggest Cam Akers as a prospect guy out there, that I used my running back 2 last year in the rookie class, out in May. So, I'm the captain of the fan club, and yet he's getting a little hot, in terms of the risk factor not being really baked in, that it's closer to the ceiling than it is the floor or even maybe the middle ground. But
We've
everything
done
they're
that
saying,
this month too, or
everything.
This week,
I know.
Say.
And everything they're saying
Dillon.
though is that, that Henderson's going to be no threat. And I'm not saying he will be, but there's still the risk of he hasn't really done it. And so when you're pricing it at a point of they've already done it and they haven't, and that's what I think a divide, at least from what they did as a rookie between DeAndre Swift and Jonathan Taylor specifically versus Cam Akers, you need to have more confidence in those two guys than Cam Akers, just based on what they've done so far. That doesn't mean he can't. That doesn't mean he won't. But producing to start the year and getting on the track that he was kind of on it to close a little bit, but even more so, and the Rams humming along, then that's going to push him, pretty much all the way. But until then, he's going to be one that, you start putting him in the top 6, 7, 8 dynasty running backs, and man, that there is definitely some historical risk to do that. All right, next one. David Montgomery's measurables are so bad that he screams sell high to me rather than buy now.
I could have said that as a rookie. I think now you get to the point where you start to de-weight that, right? Those things matter. And then you get sort of into a person's career and you should weight there's other things that matter, their age, all those things, what their future role looks like. But we kind of know the guy can play. And is it perfect? No. Do I wish he ran, 4.34? Yes. Right. Does he sometimes look like he got stuck in mud? Yes. But he's a 3-down running back locked into a job, right? Like, stop looking a gift horse in the mouth. That's kind of my opinion on David Montgomery.
Yeah, and we've talked before. I mean, he's relatively insulated for the rest of his rookie contract, and that's a couple more years. Not saying that, next year maybe they draft his maybe replacement or something like that, but looking at a strong possibility, he's a starter, a two-way producer in an NFL offense for 2 years. I mean, there's not many that are going to have more insulation than that, just to be fair in terms of opportunity. And the fact that he finished with a flourish, he was a top 10 in adjusted points per game running back last year for the season. And yet the biggest thing, you said one of the more quizzical things over the last month, you were like, the market hasn't moved as much as I thought on David Montgomery. Both of us thought we were going to be like priced out on him because look at that finish to the season, but there's still a lot of trepidation and pause in the marketplace.
Yeah. He was going right next to Dillon. Earlier this month, you're like, wow, those, like, when you sort of look at that, it's like, that's pretty quizzical. So yeah, that's the thing. And honestly, it's he's got to hope he has a good year, that Dalton has a good year signing there with Chicago, because he needs Ryan Pace to be there to give him a bad contract. Like he needs, he sort of needs.
Jordan's always thinking second level. He's thinking second, third level there.
Yeah.
He needs Ryan. That was good. For the record, I think Keenan Allen outscores Terry McLaurin this year, but it's probably pretty close.
Yeah, it's hard to argue. It's hard to say that, with any confidence right now. I think the Ryan Fitzpatrick thing is awesome. I mean, I know you and I were texting a little bit. We are Ryan Fitzpatrick fans. I'm excited for this, and just call me crazy, but San Francisco 49ers went to the Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo as their quarterback, and essentially a defense that could absolutely hunt. The Washington football team has a defense that is constructed very similarly, and I think an upgraded quarterback. So, could you say hey, this team plays really deep into January? That'd be awesome to see. And I'm a huge Ryan Fitzpatrick fan, and I think he unlocks something for Terry McLaurin. Could the two of them? I think that the two of them are probably in similar ranges of outcomes. Would it surprise me if either one of them outscored the other one? No, not really.
Yeah, I think Keenan Allen, though, I mean, such a lock and load bet. You got Justin Herbert blending the gap with Phillip Rivers there, and Mike Williams hasn't turned out. No Hunter Henry now. So I think Keenan Allen is one of my favorites right now. And let's close on a favorite of ours. We've got, and this is in a one quarterback format that they're referencing. A first is a good cash out on Mike Evans.
If you want to lose.
He's old though. Oh, the market liquidity is fading. This might be the last off season. You get a chance to trade him for a first though, Jordan.
It's fine. You know what?
Part of the process isn't necessarily what can I trade every player on my roster for, right?
Yeah, I'll tell you what. Here's what we'll do. We'll roster him from now until he retires, and we'll take whatever money that he won us along the way. We'll throw it in a savings account. And 5 years from then, we can buy ourselves a ticket to the NFL Hall of Fame when he gets inducted in it. And then, we'll go there, which is probably going to be in it's 5-year waiting period. He's 27. So, I mean, it's going to be a decade from now that's going to happen. So we should be able to get some ROI. Hey, we'll invest it in Bitcoin. Well, we can maybe get a suite or something at the Hall of Fame thing. We'll be fine. So
that's some year in the future, Tom Brady might not be his quarterback.
Right, yeah.
Maybe.
Did you see the Brady contract?
Oh my God.
By the way, people are saying, "Oh, he's this great philanthropist." Like they paid him a $40 million signing bonus.
Exactly. He's earning dividends on that money.
Right.
It's working for him. Just to pretend like he got nothing. Exactly. Yeah. And guess what? And now he has the influence. Talk about an influencer. He's getting everybody back.
Right.
He's getting everybody back. Gronk is like, oh, maybe I'll go somewhere else. No, he's going to Tampa Bay, chasing that ring. They got some of the defense back too. I mean. Yeah. Competition for targets is high, but give me the guy that's going to score the TDs, right?
Yeah. Hey, I have a question. One word answer. Where does Leonard Fournette play in 2021?
Tampa Bay, baby.
Okay. All right.
Again, I think he knows. I think he knows what he's got. And imagine when we look back at the Leonard Fournette career, where people wanted to write him off at 24 years old after a bunch of running back one seasons. Imagine him having multiple Super Bowls. Imagine that. All
Yeah.
the running backs that don't go to Super Bowls, don't, have no headway, the best running backs don't ever win it, and that type of stuff, all that dialogue. And imagine Leonard Fournette, multi-ring guy.
Yeah.
God, it was fun to watch him. Yeah. I mean, I think the fantasy wise, maybe going to Seattle is going to be better. But again, I think he goes back to Tampa. Who knows? Tampa, of course, Tampa Bay might get James White too. So they might just be collecting. Everybody's going there. Yeah. They're like, no one's paying crap. Let me go pay for the Buccaneers. At least it'll be fun. At least I'll probably win 11, 12 games, and who knows what's going to happen, with a good postseason run. So
I'll rent myself out for a chance to win a ring. Like,
there you go. Intern. We'll offer ourselves up. We'll be analytical interns for Tampa Bay. Mm-hmm. Just get on the clock there. All right. So we talked a ton about free agency, a lot about the process, players that are still out there, some of the moving pieces, and again, being neutral, if not a little skeptical of some of these landing spots. We'll dive into a few more of them next week, and we'll have some new ones to go. Of course, we're talking about process, player value, pick value in Dynasty trading. Also mentioned the March Madness pool there you can get to on the footballguys.com homepage. And of course, quotes from the valuable Football Guys Dynasty forum where, again, they're spot on, as well as some points that we can refine there at the end of the show. I am Chad Parsons. He is Jordan McNamara. And until next time, good luck in your Dynasty leagues.